Angela, you can go. Let's keep it a minute or less, though. Let's keep it quick.
Wait, sorry, what was it again?
So I'll just repeat it. Male depression is an all-time high. Men are committing suicide in record numbers. Why is this happening? Like, why are men more depressed nowadays than they were? And what are some potential solutions?
I believe that the depression is at the all-time high because we're still heavily dependent on the patriarchy system for men to operate in the society where it isn't just fully functioning for them to just be back labor mammals, I guess. I believe that we don't teach men how to express themselves and how to navigate through the society we live in now, being that it's driven with technology, AIs, and all that crap, not just, I don't know, changing the oil rigs and all that stuff. There's no space that men are creating with each other to actually have solutions instead of just pandering to each other.
Okay, Andrew?
Well, that was the most absurd shit that I ever heard in my life. But other than that being completely absurd and making no sense whatsoever, I think that the reason that you see the male suicide rate so high, and by the way, you have to break this down a little bit better because there's actually demographics of males where the suicidality is much less than other demographics of males. So I think it has to be broken down this way. But generally, I think it's due to the fact that we've kind of moved more towards a gynocentric society. We've started to move this way. There's been kind of a great con that has been put on men's backs and that they're starting to recognize. But they've essentially been treated like shit for, I don't know, about 50 years or so. And you can see the kind of suicide numbers reflect this a bit. So as you're kind of looking at this scale and this arc, which has happened, you start to recognize that, divorce is pitted against them. All of these different things are pitted against them. And then you have this really key fundamental factor, which is that nobody gives a shit about men, including other men. Now, we are competitive by nature. We're always going to be competitive by nature. And I would expect to see the suicidality of men be higher than it is for women. I would expect to see that due to that kind of ontological nature which we have. So I think that also another thing which people forget about in this conversation often is that men are just better at it. So when they take the final solution, they make sure it's final because they know how to use guns and things like this. They make sure that it's over. Whereas women, when they make these attempts, they use pills, things that won't damage the face, all of these different types of things. So this is more than just a singular answer. This is more nuanced and it has complexity to it. So I'm happy to get into it.
Michael?
Yeah, Andrew took part of my point. So men and women on average do attempt suicide at similar rates. Now, when we're talking about 40-year-old men who are divorced, that's a much higher level. But men tend to commit suicide more because they use guns and ropes and balconies, and women tend to use slitting of the wrists and pills. I don't know if we can say all this stuff on YouTube, but that tends to be the reason why. Now, going back to what you said before, I'm going to go back to my original statement before. As we get further and further, if the majority of the human experience, let's just say 300,000 years of human experience, has been humans in survival scenarios, and things that aided in survival would lead to rewarding, and things that were not aiding in survival would lead to, like, say, depression. As we get further and further away from a survival scenario and we get our gratification from things that don't cause us to accomplish goals or don't accomplish us to move our bodies, we just sit there and, like, again, I play a ton of video games, but play video games, watch pornography, things like that. As we get further and further away from a survival scenario, we're not accomplishing goals. And thus, by not accomplishing those goals, we get further and further into depression. We get further and further away from our natural state. And that's why I believe the increase in depression, especially with men, is concerned. And that also men being zeroed out after divorce.
Destiny?
Yeah, I feel like men have a really hard time like sorting themselves out emotionally, especially later on in life. I think like the highest age for suicides, I think it's like the 40 to 60 demographic of, I think for white men are like the highest at risk. And I think a lot of the times is because it might be because they're divorced. It might be just because they're lonely, but like kids are out of the house. They don't have any friends. They don't know how to reach out and talk to anybody. And then men have a really hard time asking for help because I think like 40% of them say that it's like too embarrassing to do so, or that like they figured it out on their own and they don't want anybody to help them. So I think that men are kind of really in a rough shape when it comes to emotionally navigating the world. I don't know how we can blame it on feminism or anything else when it seems like men have always been predisposed towards higher suicidality than women, I believe. Seems like I go with that one.
Alec?
Yeah, so ultimately it's kind of men's fault. Men don't support other men. Men don't lend an open ear to other men when men are down. If a man goes to another man and says like, "Hey, I'm depressed. Hey, I'm going through shit. It's fucking weak. Hit the gym. Like, pussy, soy boy, hit the gym. Like, get off of Pornhub." Like, and they don't, like, men don't help other men going through issues, and because it hurts a man's ego to go to a woman who, and women often are supportive, but men almost never turn to a woman for emotional support because men have an ego issue. If men were more supportive to other men and men had less of a fucking ego, I think that men would be able to get the help they need. And in addition to that, Andrew brought up the point that like when men commit suicide versus women committing suicide, a lot of times men just do it better. Like, that sounds really fucked up to say, but it's true. And then the final point would be, why is it at record high numbers? You have social media, you have all these red pilled shit and like all the social media shit where a depressed single man is at home, goes on his phone, is just scrolling through these billionaires with these supercars, with these models, and thinking, I will never have that. What is the point of living? No girl wants me. I'm miserable. I'm fat. I'm overweight. I'm not fit. I will never be attractive like that. And they feel like there's no fucking hope. And they don't want to go to therapy because it's frowned upon. They don't want to reach out to their friends because they'll get bullied for it. I just think if men were more, I don't know, supportive to other men, I don't think we'd see that much of an issue. And I personally don't know what to do to change that because men have been like this for decades and decades and decades.
Open panel, have at it, guys and girls.
Yeah, well, I guess that's one thing that women can do. We can emotionally express ourselves so we don't commit suicide first. So I guess we finally figured out what women are good at. So being.
Wait, what?
Yeah, because we sit here and say that men
back.
commit suicide and they're. Say it again, Malik.
No. This is a question for you. This was your
Oh, sorry, I
statement.
heard something in my sentence.
Yeah.
So,
You don't think that it's because, women tend to like take pills and things like that are less effective than men?
No, I think at the end of the day, I think
because
women
what men will do is they'll literally put a weapon in their mouth and pull the trigger. So there's absolutely no chance that there's going to be a failure. And women don't try to do that. So I don't even understand this argument that you're making. Can you flesh it out for me?
My argument is that men don't at least speak about their issues. You don't talk about it. So what do? You go straight to action, which is you just want to commit the actual action of suicide. With women, we at least talk about it. We think about our kids. We think about our family. We think about.
Then why are they attempting it at the same rates and just men are more effective? That's the question. That's a big hole in your argument.
It's a cry for help. It's a cry for help.
Is it a cry for help, or is it because if you look at what undertakers and people like this say, women don't want to damage their face? There's a big thing with literally, I don't know why, but they don't actually want to damage their face when they have an open casket funeral, things like this. So they tend to not, and also because they don't usually own guns, they don't tend to utilize guns for suicide. Don't you think that's a better explanation?
I don't think that's it. This might sound mean. I wish I could find research to back this up, but like if you're a woman and you take like 8 pills, I don't think you're trying to kill yourself. I think if you want to kill yourself, I think you'll kill yourself. I feel like it's
personality disorder.
What?
Like borderline personality disorder, like cry for help.
Sure. Yeah. I think, I don't think that if you try to OD using pills, I don't think you're as committed to it as you could be.
Yeah. So going back to men not expressing their emotions, they don't talk about it. They don't create spaces for it.
Angela, can I ask you a question? So
Please.
A lot of the times, if you were to say, why is it these men are actually committing suicide, and you were to ask them, a lot of them, it's financially being zeroed out. So that's one of the things where if I'm in that situation and maybe I do want to talk about my feelings, it doesn't make the problem go away. And 86% of the time, primary care is given to the woman after a divorce. And so now I've lost my children and I've lost a lot of money. It's not saying that it's a justification for committing suicide, but a lot of times feelings don't have anything to do with it. And that's the reason why they would commit suicide. It's not necessarily that they're not talking about their feelings enough. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That just might be an alternate hypothesis rather than just.
Wait. Also, wait, hold on real quick. Your example kind of defeated itself because you're saying that the reason why women don't commit suicide as much after divorce is because so many people console them. So it seems like it literally is because of their feelings. No?
Well, I mean, women aren't committing suicide because they're getting financially zeroed out, because the acquisition of resources maybe means something different to them. I don't know. Like, I think for a man, he kind of comes to the realization is like my value and my worth throughout my entire life. And by the way, I'm not saying this is right. Comes from how much I can produce and how productive I am. And so now I've lost all that. Maybe a lot of suicides happened after the crash of 2000, the crash of 08. You saw an increase in the number of suicides then. And then additionally, with men are being awarded or women are being awarded custody 1.5 standard deviations about 86% of the time, then that would mean that they're far likely to suffer from the depression. Or if they're the ones with primary custody, far less likely to commit suicide when they're the primary caregiver of a child. So that's
Guys,
true.
let me just to kind of put things in perspective. So men have always historically committed suicide a little bit more than women, right? But as you can see, it was pretty close. And then in the 60s, 70s, something started to happen where women's suicide rate stayed the same and men just skyrocketed, right? So, one of the things we're discussing is what exactly happened. What caused the suicide rate for men to just go through the roof? Anyway, you were saying, Destiny?
I was responding to something that that was being said. But now we just said that. I don't know what happened. I was responding to something Michael said. I don't remember what I was responding to though.
I was talking about feelings. We're talking about feelings and not committing suicide.
Yeah.
Oh,
so,
yeah. I think, yeah. I was going to say, like, a guy that gets divorced shouldn't kill himself, right? There's probably some level of counseling or therapy that could help there. I don't think that's like an inevitability that, like, if you get divorced, you have to kill yourself. But I think that women have an easier time asking for help versus men. Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's men's fault.
That's what?
Yeah.
That's men's fault. Like,
I mean,
women have
Alex,
an easier time
Alex,
asking for help. Because if a woman goes to another woman and says, hey, I'm depressed, I'm suicidal, whatever, that woman will typically listen and offer whatever support they can or encourage their friend to get help, even if it's a fucking stranger. If a man goes to another man and expresses he is mentally not okay, 9 out of 10 times, he's going to be made fun of and bullied for it, which is only going to make him worse.
Hold on. Alex, have you done this? Destiny, have you guys ever talked to a friend of yours from committing suicide? I've hundreds of times.
This is really rough, and I think we're bad at this. That's a really bad question for me, actually.
Destiny's told his friends to kill themselves when they've told him.
Well, not actually, but even I would say, Michael, I think you, me, and Alex are probably bad for this because if I had to guess, probably most men like over the age of 30 are going to take those conversations really seriously. I don't know how seriously they're going to take those conversations in high school. You know, like I think that if you're a guy over 25 or 30 and you bully your friends, you are legitimately a sociopathic piece of shit who should have your like throat cut. But if you're a guy that bullies your friends and you're in high school, you're probably like a normal dude, you know? Whereas I don't know if that same like level of vitriol, even towards friends, I feel like it's probably enforced more by men at an earlier age. I could be wrong on that, but that's like just a guess. My hope is that like any guy over 30, because that's how we play. That's what we do with each other. Like even look at like guys. Well,
that's why the depression and suicide rates are higher. Like I said, it's a man's problem. Like
sounds like you're making an argument for toxic masculinity, Malik.
True. It is toxic masculinity. Like
I
have 7 brothers. I have 7 brothers, and I'm very close with all of them. So I barely am familiar with how men think and their mindsets towards things. And so many men are just so quick to just attack someone for being either down or lesser than society expects. And it's like I never see men. Like, okay, sometimes you see it, but like the majority of the time when a man is down, other men, because they're competitive by nature, they will try to get higher up and leave that man in the dirt or push them even lower to get higher up in life. Like men don't
but
want to like all win together.
But isn't part of the stoic nature of men and all of that hazing that also leads to a quality that nobody talks about, which is bravery? Couldn't it be possible that some of this could be accounted for with the fact that men will actually follow through with this because they're braver than women?
I don't
think there's anything brave. Hold on, Roger. I don't think there's anything brave about committing suicide. No, I don't think that's bravery.
I think suicide is the most cowardly thing you can do. I don't think bravery has anything to do with
hang on. These are nice platitudes, but most people don't lean towards self-termination, and there has to be some kind of aspect of follow through to actually do that. Now, you can make the argument it's mental illness or any number of different things, fine. But could there be an aspect that part of this hazing and part of the kind of stoic nature, which is men, would lead them to do this just because they have the follow through to do so, whereas women don't seem to?
I personally will never excuse suicide or try to make justification for it. Suicide is quitting, it's giving up on life, it's throwing in the towel, it's being a coward, and it's being a shit person to everyone in your life. It's literally one of the worst things you can do. So I think that, I don't know, trying to justify like why the reason they're
So
killing
Malik,
themselves-
when samurais did seppuku and they like opened their bow, killed themselves for
Why
their
would you
lord, you don't
compare
think
this
that
to
was
just
bravery?
no, bro? Don't even answer that question. That's such a stupid comparison.
He doesn't want to say hi.
Hold on.
Why is that a bad comparison? They're killing
Because
Kylie wanna
themselves.
say how do you
because
just-
ritual suicide killing for the honor of your fucking chiefdom or whatever is different than somebody that's like depressed and hopeless and kill themselves because they have nothing else in life going on for them.
So if you're looking at the suicidality in Japan, you're going to chop that up to cultural distinction of them wanting to keep their honor intact.
I'm
right?
sorry, you think people in Japan that commit suicide are doing it because they view it as seppuku?
No, I'm agreeing with you that there's at least some type of cultural distinction, which leads them to think that there's at least some kind of honor that's kept intact by their suicide, be it
No,
some shame that they brought on their family,
Andrew,
right?
I don't
You're
agree.
literally like to
Well,
some degree, like,
what do you
idolizing
think the
act of committing
distinction?
suicide.
Well, what do you think the distinction is, and why do you think that there's such a high suicidality rate there?
Because they have
It's
all
not
the
masculine.
things.
It's not brave. It's not anything positive to commit.
Yeah, I don't care
suicide.
about
Like,
the
what
virtue
fuck are
signaling.
you
I'm just
saying?
asking basic logic questions.
Because I'm pretty sure, don't they have a whole bunch more predictors for things for why people would want to kill themselves? Their psychological and mental health is worse. They stay together with their parents longer. They don't move out as quickly. Their job prospects aren't as good. They're lonely. They don't like men don't know how to talk to women or get dates. Like they're very like isolated emotionally from each other. They don't go out and talk to each other much. Like, aren't these all things that are big predictors of
Yes,
society?
but there's
Like,
also the predictor of honor. There's an honorific which is there, and
I'm sorry, show me that. Show me that.
And a lot
Andrew.
of times,
Where is the honorific?
I actually can. There's left behind in suicide notes. They brought shame to their family. Sometimes just for something as simple as not graduating high school, which are endlessly shamed for in society for doing. It's part of the honor culture, which is there. You don't think that it takes some amount of follow through for the culture or some amount of bravery to do this?
No.
I think that, yeah, well, I think it does ultimately. Yeah, I think it does. Now, I'm not saying that it's optimal. I think it should be discouraged at every turn, but I think it's silly to think that men can outperform women on being able to, in their own life, if you didn't bring in that they had some kind of follow through that women didn't have on this.
I think that it all boils down to communication. And we talk about like the aftermath of what men do after divorces. I think that we don't talk about how to prevent these issues as far as like the lack of communication leading up to the divorce as to why he felt like he needed to put a gun in his mouth and end his life. I mean, men don't communicate their emotions. And Michael, you said earlier,
so here's the distinction, actually, because Destiny asked. And the distinction is the studies that I'm looking at show that in the West, it's divorce and family court for men, which is the number one kind of cited reason for these deaths, but not in Japan. That's not the case in Japan.
Yeah, because they're not even getting
divorce.
married. But keep in mind that it could be the same reason, right? So firstly, it's hard to figure out a reason for suicide because a guy that kills himself can't really tell you why he did it, right?
They leave
Now
notes.
we can look at like attempted suicide. But however, when you say divorce or marriage court or whatever, are they killing themselves because they got divorced, or are they killing themselves because they're alone and they have nobody to talk to or be with now?
Well, I think,
so in Japan, when you kill yourself because you can't even get out of the house to find a significant other, or you're lonely your whole life, a guy that hasn't even been married might kill himself for the exact same reason a divorced man kills himself.
it's possible, but the thing is like, let's look at these distinguishing factors here. You would agree with me that we have two very distinct societies between Western society and Japanese society. When you're looking at these types of distinctions, if you're looking at the studies showing divorce, family court, and the citations there, and we also have the suicide notes left behind, I think that we can make a distinction here, that there are cultural distinctions for why people do this. And this does seem to allude to the evidence that here, the depression comes maybe from loneliness and things like that, as opposed to shame, where it might come in other demographic areas. That's what I'm saying.
Okay,
So
it doesn't, but the cultural differences don't really matter, because the common denominator in men committing suicide is men feeling depressed, like they have no other option. They feel too embarrassed or whatever to go and get help. And at the end of the day, it just comes down to men needing to feel less ashamed about reaching out and getting help.
So you think that this is broadly cross-cultural then, where men just refuse to do this? Maybe it's part of our nature?
I think yes.
Like it's part of our nature, maybe?
No, I think it's like
not part of it.
I think it's a social conditioning. Like when you tell someone at a young age,
social.
Then
Like,
why would it be
Yeah,
such
it's a-
cross-culture?
Angela, yeah, that's a great question. Like, why, if we look historically, men have not had the ability to communicate their feelings as well as women throughout history. So it's probably not a cultural thing. It's probably a genetic thing. When we talked before about being stoic, right? Not only does stoicism something that men look to other men and say, hey, like the Clint Eastwood type of stoicism, they look at those men as being more high status. Women also reward that type of behavior. And because of that, men are less likely to share their feelings. That's just one of the reasons why. And, there are probably other reasons why, but the answer is probably more it's in a man's nature. It's in his genetics for him to not be as good at sharing his feelings as women are. Now,
right. Part of the nature
that's
what I'm alluding to is that there must be some part of the nature, if it's cross-cultural and you still see a heightened level among men. I would think that this would be part of something which is man's nature. Now, I think maybe it's arguable which aspects, and I don't disagree with Destiny 100% that there's not social qualifiers for this. Obviously, there are. We have the reported reasons for it, but I do think that there is a nature to men and a nature to women, which is distinctly different. And part of that nature is that, I think because we have this aggressive nature, things like this, we have the follow through for that.
And I think it's also men by nature are leaders. Men by nature are competitive. Men by nature want to have status and be on top. And I think when men don't achieve that, they are extremely hard on themselves to the point where sometimes they just give up and end it. I don't think men by nature are going to commit suicide more. I think just men by nature have take ego way more seriously and take status and all that way more seriously than women do. So when they aren't at the level, you can't
separate one from the other, Malik. You can't take that. It's like that is the essence of male. If that is an essence of maleness, you can't.
So okay, I guess by nature
would commit suicide less because they are committing suicide more and have always. That's the reason why.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess
if men and women were not in a vacuum,
yeah, you could make that statement. But I think the solution to that is just that men need to support men better and have less of an ego complex. Where if you're not number one with a sports car and a hot girl by age 25 or 26, or if your wife divorces you, you don't have to end it. You can get help, you can get support. You don't always have to be number one. And I think that the competitive nature is a dangerous
but
mindset.
I mean, so I don't disagree with everything you're saying, but don't you think that, really the outreach towards men's support is that's a pretty recent thing where there has really been any type of outreach towards men's issues, men's rights issues. Talking maybe the last decade where it's even become prominent at all in my lifetime anyway. So this is kind of a new thing that we're dealing with, isn't it? It's kind of
it's hard to reach out for men's issues because as soon as you start talking about it, a lot of the leaders in the men community push back against it. Right? The quote unquote leaders in men's communities right now, for red pill type people, are going to tell you that emotions are gay. And they're going to tell you that talking about your feelings as a guy makes you a fucking loser. And they're going to say that if you cry in front of a girl, she's going to leave you instantly. On that Fresh and Fit unofficial subreddit, half that subreddit spent 2 weeks roasting Myron because he cried a little bit when his YouTube channel got demonetized, which is probably one of the most traumatizing things that he's probably ever experienced in his life. So it's not surprising that it's hard to talk about these issues when either women have to talk about them, which, let's be real, as men, we don't want to hear women talk about our experiences. And then when we look to men to talk about them, they basically just say that we're weak or pussies or losers or whatever for having emotion.
Wait a second. Let me push back a little bit on this because I think that that's an absurd statement. I think that all of those things, stoicism and these types of things, that is good advice from these red pill leaders. Now, you might say, well, wait a second. When we talk about these things or roasting these guys incessantly for crying and this kind of thing, I think it's because we've been told that it's not okay for us to lean into our nature. So it's not okay for us to be stoic. We need to be more emotional, things like this. And that's where the lack of support really comes in, is from society at large saying, no, you need to not be so masculine. You need to not do these things. That's my counter to that, Destiny.
Well, but it seems like the hyper masculinity is part of the problem, that your refusal to talk to somebody or open up to somebody, be vulnerable to somebody about a problem seems to be a big issue. Where the number one
masculinity, you mean?
Yes. Yeah. It seems like one of the biggest predictors for being suicidal, even in Japan, is being isolated and depressed. Or I'm sorry, being isolated. There was another word I was looking for, but it's not that. But being isolated, yeah. That if you have nobody in your life, you're fucked, and that's going to be one of your big predictors for actually killing yourself.
Yeah, I mean,
And
yeah, I
it
get
also-
that that's a predictor, but don't you think though that as the light has been shined on these men specific issues, these are more tailored towards men, that as kind of these red pill leaders who I don't agree with a lot of what they say, I come from a Christian standpoint, but I do agree with a lot of the descriptions that they make of these problems, that it is actually okay for men to embrace this kind of stoicism. It is okay for us to be masculine, not talk about our feelings, things like this. Isn't it really societal pushback which is causing that, saying, no, you need to, you know, it's not okay for you to be this way. It's not okay to be a man. It's not okay to be a masculine man. Like,
Well,
there's
because
a lot of that.
what you're talking about is literally the things that drive a lot of guys to suicide. I can't talk about this. I got to be a man. I need to man up. I shouldn't be upset about these things. I should just figure it out on my own. Like, that seems to be the problem.
Yeah, but
Let's
the
also
problem-
let Michael get a word in after you're done.
Oh,
Andrew.
okay. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say before when we think about people who lived 50,000 years ago, their daily routine was basically not quite on the level of starvation, but they're on a survival scenario all the time. There's no money. There's status is basically based on how much they can provide for their tribe. In those type of situations, depression doesn't creep in because their life is either survive or die. And so you have those situations over and over again, when those people don't have time to sit there and be introspective and look at other people on social media and compare themselves to cars and other people's girlfriends, et cetera, every day is kill the gazelle or family dies.
Wait, hang on. There's a problem here, though, and this is why I'm giving the pushback that I'm giving. Why do you see the suicidality rate so low in the 30s, 40s, 50s, things like this?
I think we're closer to survival.
As it's accelerated. And no, this was not a survival tech. You know, we weren't hunting gazelles in the 50s. This was not at all. And yet you see those rates significantly lower. Don't you think that this is because it was actually okay for you to be toxic or part of this toxic masculinity, that was viewed by society as being all right instead of all this pushback against it?
I don't know. I think you still are closer to a survival scenario before the advent of broad spectrum antibiotics in the 1930s. So like that's why I still think
I'm talking about the 50s.
Okay, in the 50s, maybe things are definitely a little different, but we're still an agrarian culture until like maybe after World War II. And so I think in those situations, when you're in a situation where I got to get up and work every day, I don't have time to compare myself to other people. I think as time passes on, once we get to the 1950s, we have the advent of television around 1953. And then later on, we get into, we start comparing ourselves to other people. I think that's where the depression starts to happen. Usually when you go back and look at Dunbar's number, Dunbar's the anthropologist who had this idea that human societies were always 150
Yes,
people.
I might agree with some of that, but again, the pushback is, even if that's true, if it's the advent of television communication, isn't it a pushback on the ideas that you have and the masculinity that you hold and things like this? That's bad. Isn't that the pushback you're talking about?
Sure,
the advent of these things.
That could be it too, but I also think like it's not necessarily like people going around and being like, I need to be more masculine and more feminine or talk about my feelings. I think it was one of the things that I've noticed is that when I went to basic training, all the things I cared about before basic training.
What branch were you?
Air Force. When I went to
that's not basic training.
I went to OTS. When I was in OTS, I remember how about this survival school. I went to SEER school where they beat you and they throw you in a jail cell and they keep you up for a couple of days. When I'm in those situations, one of the things I remembered was I didn't care about.
Is that pararescue?
No, I was. It's Spokane, Washington, at Fairchild Air Force Base. It's SEER school, survival, evasion, reconnaissance, and escape.
I thought that was a prerequisite for pararescue. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it is. It is a correct.
Okay.
There were pararescue guys in our class.
Okay,
That was back in 2004. So anyway, in that situation, I noticed all these things that were in my mind, all these weird thoughts about how do I look, and I didn't care about how I looked. I didn't care about how I smelled. I didn't care about talking to women. I didn't care about what TV show was on. I was back into
because those are okay. Scenario. It was all okay, right? It was pushed that you should be that way.
Because I had 3 square meals and a place to sleep. So then I could go previously and then debate who owns Twitter or who the next president is. When I'm in a survival scenario, all I care about is surviving, getting away from pain, finding a comfortable place to sleep, and finding food. And the majority of human existence was that.
Yeah, but wasn't the culture based around embracing your masculinity and embracing what are considered broadly now to be toxic features? That is part of military culture. And so, of course, Of course, if that's the case, as you see this, wouldn't you agree with me then that a lot of this pushback maybe comes from all of this telecommunication and things like this,
I think
pushing back against your nature?
What he's saying isn't like has and nothing to do with it has nothing to do with anything relating to this topic. What he's really saying is like on a broad level that like if you're in the rat race like every day and you wake up, you work, you do your shit or whatever, it feels like really depressive thoughts relating to suicide. These are things that settle in when you've got a whole lot of free time and a whole lot of other people to compare yourself to, and then a whole lot of life to compare your shit to. So for instance, like again, a lot of people think that the highest suicidality is among like teenagers. It's not. It's like old men. It's men that are sitting at home. They might not be working anymore. They've got no family anymore, and they're just alone and bored and want to kill themselves. But that if you've got shit you're doing every single day, it's harder for that to set in.
Yeah, well, I get the argument that, hey, if you're not thinking about anything except whatever the pressing needs are, you're not going to be thinking about suicidality. I get that. I understand that. What I'm talking about is even in the 50s, people had plenty of free time. So why was the rate so much lower? I think that there must have been some kind of cultural pushback.
I think back then in the 50s, men could not just have free time. Like society has made everything so
They
much
did have
easier
free time.
now. Like
They had recreation.
obviously they had some free time, but nowadays you don't even need to fucking grocery shop for yourself. You can get shit ordered to your house. You don't have to drive. You can Uber, you can Lyft, you can do whatever. Like society has made it where people can be as lazy as they possibly want to. It does come at a cost, but you had to do a lot more back then. Like you had to like leave the house if you needed to get food. You today can just sit in bed all day and fucking run and order food to your house. And I think the more you are doing absolutely nothing and
Yeah, and then you could have milk
the more
delivered to your front
opportunity your
door.
brain
I just
has
don't
to
feel like
wanna,
this is a
off
good
yourself.
argument.
I think there's probably a lot more markers
No,
to
well,
success.
you said people were just as lazy back then as they are today, and I'm saying that's not
Yeah,
true.
I broadly think that that's true.
That's probably
This
true,
is-
but I don't think it's about laziness. I think one is free time and the other is like comparisons to other people. I think that like if you go
Right,
way
so
back,
the technology pushes that though, right? Don't
yes,
you think?
yeah, the technology and like the lifestyles that were sold. Like it feels like broadly speaking, it like prior to prior to like what the 70s or 80s, like basically like have a family, have a house, like you do okay, maybe get like the coolest whatever the fuck car was being made back then, and like that was it. But now it feels like you've got social pressures that are pushing you every single fucking microsecond of the day, comparing you to every single other person around the entire fucking world, right? Like my guess is probably in like the 40s and 50s, the average girl wanted to be as cool as like the best flapper or whatever the fuck they were called at their local dance school or whatever. Whereas now, like every single woman wants to be like the Kardashian or the Kylie Jenner or not even fuck. I don't even know what the fuck the celebs are because I don't follow that shit. But like people are comparing themselves.
There's a push towards
People are
materialism,
comparing themselves like on an international level more than they ever have at every single fucking moment of their life. Like a 15-year-old girl knows what the prettiest girl in the world looks like, and she's on her fucking phone in front of her every single fucking day, you know? And it's like, yeah, that type of pressure and stress. And same thing with men too, right? Like the average man, like who did the average man look up to? It was probably fucking comic book heroes in the 50s and 60s. And now the average man sees Andrew Tate as 75 Bugattis, 76 bitches, and 77 houses. And he's like, holy shit, I'm such a fucking loser, you know? Yeah.
Destiny.
Yeah, so you would say that, so then Destiny utilizing that then.
It's actually 77 Bugattis, just get that right.
Well, Destiny is like going with that then, you would say then it must be this kind of push towards societal materialism, which is problematic and definitely a massive contributing factor, right?
Yeah, it is. But that push, kind of like how I said earlier, society is gearing itself towards higher and higher IQ. It's probably gearing itself towards higher and higher EQ as well. You have to be able to resist more emotionally and psychologically, which men aren't equipped well to do, because traditionally men are equipped to work a job, get a woman with your paycheck, have sex, and then just that's kind of all you have to do as a guy. And the society is leveled up to where you need to be able to do way more mentally and emotionally, and men don't have the training for that because our fathers didn't do it, so they can't teach us to do it. And men don't really like to learn those things from women, so you're kind of just fucked.
Well, wait a second.
So, like,
those societies were dealing with global war and all sorts of things we don't have to deal with at all, where people were coming home in body bags. They were definitely dealing with significant trauma and significant emotional problems that we don't even have to deal with now. I'm not so sure that that's the answer, man.
So this is going to sound really cold, but I think in a really roundabout way, I think wars aren't the worst thing for your society. I think wars in some ways can even be positive. No, I'm saying that you've got a common enemy. Everybody goes out and works, everybody's got like a thing to build towards, like it drives you forward to have an enemy. I think that being at war with somebody, and even if people are dying, and even if it's horrible on a descriptive level, being at war with somebody, I think is a lot more mentally and psychologically endurable than every single day you wake up and you look at your cell phone and you see how poor you are, you see how many bitches you don't have, you see how much your job sucks, you see how many student loans you have, you see, I think that's way more mentally.
But wait a second, no. I mean, you're seeing your buddies getting shot, going home.
Stop. I'm not talking about an actual veteran with PTSD. Most people in the United States did not fight in World War II.
Yeah, but almost nobody was unaffected by it. I mean,
no,
still your brother died.
Most people didn't have a brother die. I'm saying that most.
Andrew, I think you're missing.
Or
the point.
your son
His
died,
point
or your
is-
friend had sons who died. Things like it was definitely a hugely traumatic experience on the society.
Yes, and for the people that it was affecting directly, those people probably had way higher suicide rates than anything today, right? But my guess is a military veteran that deployed into Normandy or whatever, or any other theater in World War II, probably has much higher suicidality rates than the average population today. So those people were affected negatively.
Sure. And like Audie Murphy wrote in his biography that he had nightmares about this and this type of thing. So I agree with you in this aspect. However, it seems again, like if we're kind of focusing on this and saying war even takes your mind away from the potentiality of thinking about suicidality and this type of thing, all roads seem to lead back to materialism being the primary problem here.
Yeah, but we're not getting rid of materialism. So now we need to learn to mentally equip ourselves for
You
it.
can actually get rid of, well, you can't get rid of materialism, but you can draw it back. And here's how you can do it. Religion teaches against materialism. Now, it doesn't state emphatically that you can have no material gains, but the whole point here is to have some discipline against materialism. That seems like it's the answer. There's no other answer except material or a religion to counter materialism. What would a secularist say against materialism? They have nothing.
Okay.
Yeah, well, I think that's all bullshit. I think that people in this day and age are just spoiled people who don't know how to express themselves in their whole position in life. I think that we're enjoying all the modern day perks of technology and the accessibility to each other's. And I think that women have always expressed themselves. They've always been emotional, whatever we can say. I think that men have emotions. They just choose not to express them. I'm not saying expressing them just to pander to each other, but I do think we need to find more solutions as to why you feel this way, or maybe surround yourself with people who have some sort of discernment to how you feel and can help you go through whatever it is you're going through, between it's a man in your life or a woman in your life, your family. I think that possibly back in the day, like I said, I think that if you're too busy building America, you don't really have time to sit here and think about how all the people on Instagram are like filthy rich, and that may be just your perception, but that's not the reality. And you don't know that if you're not talking to someone about that. And I think that a lot of younger people are just on their phones scrolling and comparing themselves to people on social media. Although they complain about it, they enjoy the hell out of it. So I guess it's a double-edged sword. Did I lose everybody?
No.
We're all here.
Angela, the only thing I would push back on is when you said people are spoiled. That is kind of Andrew's point, right? That is like maybe the part about people not talking about their feelings as much. You may disagree with him, but I actually agree with this concept. Like we've lost the ability to feel gratitude because we're constantly exposed to things that are outside of our reality, like the prettiest girls in the prettiest photos that have been face apped and they use Facetune, and people having Lamborghinis that they don't actually own that make us feel incredible amounts of FOMO that we were not evolutionarily designed to feel, cause us to feel massive amounts of depression. And another way to say that is we're spoiled, because if we were in a scenario where we had to live hand to mouth every day, we would not have the luxury of even being of worrying about that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but I think that like with all of that, it always gears you to want to do better in society. So I don't think it has to be to the extreme of you feeling like you can achieve those things, but you should want to at least, evolve.
So there is a balance, but social media does not provide that balance. Social media goes way far in one direction to show you incredible levels of what's it called, wealth and opulence.
Shit you'll never have.
Right. And that's why you have a sense of community with your friends, your family, your whoever is next to you. So
You're right. Yeah.
Check yourself and your friends and family. which is what men don't do. You guys just go fishing and just stare at the water. I think that's a big
you know what?
issue.
But hold on. But
I
think fishing.
We do what? We go fishing and just stare at the water.
Fishing and stare at the water isn't the problem. Fishing and stare at the water is probably going to keep you from committing suicide. Fishing and staring at the water
argument?
promotes gratitude. It promotes gratitude.
That's how low the bar
awareness.
is. Because, like, for example, if you go fishing, you talk about, like, listen, my wife hasn't fucking unloaded the dishwasher in 3 fucking weeks. And you're like,
is
why?
that what you
I
think
don't know.
we do when we go fishing? Let's do
Yes.
let's do a live stream. Me, Andrew, Destiny, and Alex.
Yeah, no,
go
fishing. No, listen, there is some relaxation to fishing, and it's
Fishing
true.
is
There is
Same
waiting,
fishing right
But
now.
but fishing has nothing to do with fish. It has to do with beer
listen,
drinking
hear me
and
out. I get
camaraderie.
it. I know everybody hates this because maybe y'all don't like fishing, but let's say, like, hypothetically, you have some issues in your life and you go fishing, you just stand there and you can just stand in silence. That's
It's
how
actually
low the fucking
therapeutic.
bar is for men, that you sit there. The issues are still there. It's like drinking, doing drugs, having
Okay,
sex.
but some women do their makeup at 2 a.m. for nothing. Like, it's the same
Fishing
thing.
and
Like,
having
why
sex
are we hating
are
on
good.
hobbies?
No, but
Fishing and
they-
having sex are good.
Okay, hold on.
Drugs-
I think okay. She chose the worst example, but the point that she's making is true, and that like this is what it feels like. Okay, and I think it's been true in anything I've seen, and maybe for some of you it's not. But it feels like if there is a woman and she's about to do something dumb or make a bad decision, it feels like every single woman in her life is about to give her a whole bunch of reasons why, hey, don't do this, don't do that. Like, you seem like you're in trouble. Like, what's going on? Like, let's talk about this. And men will literally kind of like sit by and nod and smile while their other men like are the most self-destructive motherfuckers in the world.
Well,
it seems
but
like we have a much harder time calling out, and I don't mean call out in like a woke way. I just mean like telling a guy like, hey, bro, you need to like wake the fuck up. Like, you're destroying your fucking life right now. It seems like men are more willing to let other men walk off
But
cliffs, be like, hey, he's doing what he's doing, good luck.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to
And
cut you
also,
off,
I
but
think
isn't
the
that part
point-
of the
I don't
nature
think
of
anyone's brought
men?
up this.
Isn't
think
that
it has
part
to
of the
be.
nature of men to take risk? Yeah, well, I think it does have to be. I mean, the
doesn't have
jobs,
to
these
be.
very jobs that we're talking about,
Not
you
on
know,
jobs
working
anymore.
online, things like this, working as a lineman for the power infrastructure, you have to take risk.
We
And
don't
being risk aversive is not good for men.
Every single man can learn to have a conversation about how they feel. Even people that work on lines, even people that are police officers, every single guy can learn that. It's not.
But what
that
does
hard.
that have to do with what I'm saying? Even if they can have a conversation about how they feel, that doesn't mean that they can necessarily mitigate the risk the same way women can.
Because that's part of mitigating the risk. The first step is being able to talk to somebody. Most men don't even want to do that.
Yeah, but when you're talking about talking
One
to
of the
other people,
reasons,
so you're
one of the
saying, like,
reasons why, one of the reasons why men
ahead.
live longer in marriage is because they're too stubborn to even go to the fucking doctor, and their wives make them do it, and they get longer lifespans.
well, actually, I think that if a man's woman dies, he dies shortly thereafter, whereas women live a much longer life.
Yeah, because men aren't the best for women all the
No,
time.
No,
But-
that's not the case. I think that it's a heartbreak issue. That's what they're looking
Sure,
at.
we can call
is
it. I'm just saying that
emotional.
men that
But
are
moving
married
back-
have
but
so
moving
many
back to
better
this, when
outcomes.
you're talking about risk, men have to take risk, whether they talk about taking the risk or not. It's no wonder that when men talk to other men, they don't mitigate them from taking risk, because we know we have to do so. You have to take risk.
No, this is so stupidly reductive. I don't know why you make this so reductive of everything. It's not about taking risks. Sometimes
I'm
guys
getting
just
to the
do.
core of the argument.
Okay, it's reductive to the point of absurdity.
How is
Like,
it absurd?
It's absurd because when you see a guy making a bad choice or a stupid choice, you're like, bro, you need to stop, or this behavior is not good. You need to call it out. You don't need
subjective.
you don't,
That's
you
a
know, it's not
subjective analysis.
subjective. If your friend is addicted to fucking crack or something, no guy is like, well, it's intrinsic in a man's life.
Those are
to take
outliers,
risks.
bro. Those are outliers. When you're talking about,
No, that's exactly what
when
we're
you-
talking
what
about.
if
Things
your
like
friend-
substance abuse. No, hold on. Drug abuse and
Dude.
substance abuse are like one of the big things associated with like fucking suicidality and shit.
yeah, sure. But if your friend comes to you, on the other hand, like with women who say, look, you know, I'm unhappy with my relationship and my job, they might get all kinds of support saying, look, you don't need to really take much risk, stay where the safety zone is. Whereas if men go to their male friends and say, look, I'm thinking about starting a business, okay, and I have X amount of money saved, and that's what
Bro,
I'm going
we're
to
not
do.
talk-
It's highly
we're
risky.
talking-
Stop.
no,
No,
we're
I
not
am talking. I'm talking. It is highly risky. And their friends are going to encourage them to do that, whereas women often will try to retract, say you shouldn't do that. You can look at the trends and see this for yourself. Women often will gatekeep that and say, don't take risk. They're not risk takers. Men are the risk takers. It's not just with drugs, Destiny.